Breaking today. The cancer-stricken and desperately ill King Charles III is about to make only the third address to the nation of his troubled reign outside of his Christmas messages to mark what is a bittersweet day, not just for the British royal family, but also the wider disunited kingdom. This day was meant to mark an unprecedented celebration, the 100th birthday of our greatest ever monarch, Queen Elizabeth II.
Today would have been Queen Elizabeth II's 100th birthday. Instead of a national celebration of that milestone, Britain marked the day with a depleted royal family, still reeling from the fallout of Andrew's arrest and Harry and Meghan's Australian tour. A cancer-stricken king who had to stop and restart his address to the nation multiple times during filming, and a statue that has already been widely described as underwhelming. This is the state of the British monarchy on what should have been one of its proudest days.
Here we see it, where William and Catherine honoured other centenarians. And there was a delightful moment, actually, when the royals' shining star, look at this, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, shared a very emotional moment with the 88-year-old George Cross hero Tony Gledhill. And look, she just guides his hands away from her hips, which I do understand.
King Charles addressed the nation only the third time he has done so outside of his Christmas messages since becoming king. The address was pre-recorded at the library at Balmoral, a place of deep personal significance given its connection to his late mother. And watching the footage carefully, you can see the pauses. You can hear the audio anomalies where filming was stopped and restarted, covered with images of the Queen, but not seamlessly enough to hide what happened. The mainstream media has not reported this. The royal rotor has not reported this, but it is visible to anyone who watches with attention. That Charles is unwell is not in question. He is undergoing treatment for terminal cancer. The treatment is described as particularly rough.
But what I can tell you about this address to the nation, as I say, only the third time that he has recorded something outside of the Christmas message as king, and this was pre-recorded at the library of Balmoral, a very special place, of course, for the late king because of the connection to his mother. He was feeling very emotional, and he is clearly unwell. During this video, you can see it. That is understandable given his ongoing treatment for terminal cancer. Indeed, if you listen carefully, you will note that filming had to be paused several times. This has been covered up with images of the late Queen, but they've done a very bad job with the audio.
His biographer, Robert Jobson, has confirmed that Charles is planning to pause his cancer treatment in order to travel to the United States for his state visit with President Trump, a decision that no ordinary medical professional would recommend, but which reflects the absolute priority Charles places on his duty and his role. For Charles, as for his mother before him, the kingship is not a job, it is a covenant.
Being my beloved mother's 100th birthday, my family and I paused to reflect on the life and loss of a sovereign who meant so much to us all, and to celebrate anew the many blessings of her memory. Queen Elizabeth's promise with destiny kept shaped the world around her and touched the lives of countless people across our nation, the Commonwealth, and beyond.
A sacred commitment made at the coronation that cannot be broken by illness or age or personal preference. He will serve until he cannot serve, and then he will serve a little longer. The address itself was, as these things go, genuinely moving. Charles spoke about his mother's promise to destiny, her constancy through decades of change, the millions who remember her for moments of national significance, and the many more who remember a fleeting personal encounter. He invoked the moment that has stayed in many people's minds, the marmalade sandwich shared with Paddington Bear in the final months of her life, a moment that somehow captured something true and human about a woman who had spent 7 decades presenting herself as an institution. And he renewed his own pledge of duty and service, which was the moment that confirmed, for those watching closely, that abdication is not being considered. He is not going anywhere. He will carry the role for as long as he is physically capable of doing so, and he will carry it in the way his mother carried it, not because it is pleasant or easy, but because it is what he promised God and the country he would do. The question of abdication has been raised with increasing frequency as Charles's health has declined, and it is worth addressing directly because it touches on something important about how the monarchy works. Abdication is not a feature of the British constitutional system in any normal sense. The single modern precedent, Edward VIII in 1936, was an aberration of a very specific kind, driven by very specific personal circumstances that Charles's situation does not remotely resemble. For Charles, as for Elizabeth before him, the coronation was not a ceremony. It was a sacrament, a moment of spiritual transformation as significant as ordination in the church. You do not walk away from a sacrament because things have become difficult. You do not retire from a covenant because your health is poor. The role defines who you are at the most fundamental level, and to relinquish it would be, in Charles's understanding, not just a political decision, but a spiritual one of the gravest magnitude.
Through each passing decade, through every transformation, she remained constant, steadfast, and wholly devoted to the people she served. Millions will remember her for moments of national significance, many others for a fleeting personal encounter, a smile, a kind word that lifted spirits, or for that marvelous twinkle of the eye when sharing a marmalade sandwich with Paddington Bear.
Those close to Charles have confirmed that his condition, while serious, is currently stable. He looks tired. He looks haggard, as anyone going through the kind of treatment he is receiving would look. But there is no imminent crisis, no immediate cause for the kind of urgent public concern that some commentary has suggested. He is managing his illness and continuing to govern, and the state visit to the United States next week is his next major commitment, one he clearly intends to fulfill, regardless of the medical cost of pausing treatment to do so.
For, as a young Princess Elizabeth put it in her first ever public broadcast, aged just 14, we can each play our part to make the world of tomorrow a better and happier place. It is a belief which I share with all my heart. So, young or old, and whatever our differences, let us therefore seek to follow this example as we make today not the marking of a milestone felt by absence, but the celebration of a life well lived and a legacy of hope as we strive together towards a better, happier tomorrow.
Now let's talk about the state visit to America and the extraordinary detail that has emerged about Charles's private feelings toward his presidential host. Tina Brown, the former Vanity Fair editor and well-connected royal author, has published a piece revealing that a royal advisor told her days before the visit that Charles privately despises Donald Trump in the most visceral terms. This is an extraordinary leak, not because the private views of a monarch about a sitting foreign president are particularly surprising people in public life, often have strong private feelings about other people in public life, but because a royal advisor appears to have shared those feelings with a journalist shortly before a major state visit that both parties are supposed to approach in a spirit of diplomatic goodwill. The context makes this particularly interesting. Charles has spent decades as Prince of Wales building a reputation as a champion of interfaith understanding, environmental protection.
Okay, so that is King Charles III's address to the nation, straight to Rafe Hadel Manku. Okay, so the big news really at the end there, Rafe. King Charles making a solemn pledge to duty and service. So anyone who was even countenanced, and I know you've always been opposed to this, Rafe, we've discussed it, but you know there has been a lot of speculation about a potential abdication because of his ongoing health battle. My reading of that, Rafe, is he is saying absolutely not. I will not abdicate no matter how unwell I'm going to be. and I will continue serving just like my late mother did. That was my reading of the main news line out of that, Rafe. Do you think that is what the king is saying there?
Absolutely. It's what I've been saying for months now. It's what I said on your channel and many other channels. For the king and for the queen, abdication is an impossibility. It doesn't exist in our constitution for a start. There was a brief aberration in 1936 with Edward VIII, but it's not part of our system. And for the queen and for the king, the coronation service was a deeply spiritual moment.
And the kind of multilateral international cooperation that Trump has consistently opposed or undermined. The philosophical gap between Charles and Trump is real and significant. Charles wanted to be known as defender of faith rather than defender of the faith, a subtle but meaningful change that reflects a worldview in which all sincere religious traditions deserve respect and recognition, not just the established Church of England. Trump has attacked Pope Leo. He has taken positions on international affairs that are antithetical to much of what Charles has spent his public life advocating. And yet the visit will happen. Charles will be gracious, dignified, and diplomatically impeccable. He will not allow his private views to surface in any way that could damage the relationship between Britain and America. This is precisely the value of having a constitutional monarchy rather than an elected head of state. The person representing the country can separate their personal views from their institutional obligations in a way that a politician simply cannot. The Queen never revealed which presidents she liked or disliked.
Break that on a whim. I do think abdication will become something that of a norm in Britain with possibly the reign of King William. I think he will be the first king to abdicate at around 70 or 75 to ensure that we have young monarchs coming to the throne rather than just a series of elderly monarchs. But no, the King Charles III will not abdicate.
Charles will maintain the same discipline. The state visit will go well. The diplomatic relationship will be served. And whatever Charles actually thinks about Donald Trump will remain officially exactly where it should private. Tina Brown's piece also contains what is perhaps her most provocative, broader assessment of the Queen's legacy, and it is worth engaging with honestly rather than dismissing. Brown argues that Elizabeth's extraordinary longevity on the throne, 7 decades, 3 full reigns worth of time, paradoxically fossilized the monarchy and insulated it from the changes it needed to make. The problems that Charles has inherited Andrew's situation, the opacity of royal financial arrangements, the sealed wills, the infrastructure of an institution that grew around a specific person over 70 years and now needs to adapt to very different circumstances. All of these are, in Brown's analysis, partly the product of Elizabeth's own approach to governance. Her aversion to conflict, which Brown calls ostriching, meant that difficult decisions were repeatedly deferred. Andrew was indulged far beyond what the institution could sustainably accommodate. Harry was given more latitude than the situation warranted for longer than it served either Harry or the institution. And the structural reforms that a shorter, more turbulent reign might have forced earlier were not made because Elizabeth's personal authority was sufficient to hold things together without them. This is not an unfair assessment, though it needs to be balanced.
Expect someone to look like if they were going through this particularly rough treatment that he's going through, but that there is no reason for us to have any urgent worries or something imminent happening or anything like that. He's managing his care as best he can, and there's no reason for us to have any sort of undue alarm or concern. And I can only go with the people who I trust as being more in the know than I am.
Elizabeth's longevity was also, by almost any measure, an extraordinary gift to the institution. The stability she provided, the trust she accumulated, the international standing she built over decades of consistent and dedicated service. These things were of enormous value and would have been considerably harder to build if the throne had changed hands more frequently. A monarchy that changes leadership every 15 or 20 years is a more adaptive institution in some respects, but it is also a more precarious one. The authority that Elizabeth possessed in her final years, the ability to navigate political crises, to manage family disasters, to represent the country in moments of both celebration and grief, was inseparable from the accumulated weight of decades on the throne. But the specific problems Brown identifies, Andrew, the financial opacity, the sealed wills, are real, and they are Charles's to manage now. He has made significant efforts with some of them. The working royal family has been slimmed. The York question has been effectively resolved, at least from a public visibility standpoint. The institutional reform agenda that William will eventually inherit is further advanced than it was when Elizabeth died. But the underlying structural questions about what the monarchy is, what it owns, what it costs, and how it accounts for itself remain substantially unaddressed.
Live and you're saying happy birthday. Well, congratulations on reaching 100. It's a shame about your perverted son, isn't it? You don't say things like that in a very nice tribute to a woman who's turned 100. I would have been amazed, and it would have been just inconceivable that he would have mentioned anything negative by name in a tribute paid to a woman, of course, who served the country loyally for 70 years as monarch, longer even if you consider her time as princess. It's one of the rare moments that the monarchy has had recently to have a good news story and celebrate something positive. The Queen was obviously the greatest weapon in the monarchy's arsenal, and this wouldn't be an occasion when you want to have reminders of the less savory and more appalling aspects of recent history.
And those questions are not going to be resolved by a cancer-stricken king who is pausing his treatment to visit Washington. Let's now talk about the statue, because it is a small thing in the larger picture, but it is the kind of small thing that reveals a great deal about a country's relationship with its own history and its own sense of itself. A statue of Queen Elizabeth II has been unveiled at the British Museum as part of the centenary commemorations. And the response has been, to put it gently, underwhelming, rather than the kind of grand, triumphant monument that would adequately honor the longest-serving monarch in British history, something in the tradition of the Victoria Memorial outside Buckingham Palace or the Albert Memorial in Kensington Gardens. What has been produced is a relatively modest figure in garter robes, standing on a base, looking like what critics have unkindly but not entirely inaccurately described as a Monopoly piece on top of a bollard. For a woman who reigned for 70 years, who served with distinction through the most extraordinary transformations in British history, who represented continuity and stability through Cold War and decolonization and economic crisis and constitutional upheaval and 2 further global pandemics, for that woman, the national monument being produced appears to have been designed by people who lack either the ambition or the understanding to do the subject justice. Lord Foster, the architect involved, is known for sleek, modernist designs that work well on contemporary buildings and less well as expressions of historical reverence or national pride. The result is a monument that will be looked at for decades and found by many of those who look to be inadequate to the woman it commemorates. This matters because monuments are not just aesthetic objects. They are statements about what a nation values, about how it sees itself and its history, about the relationship between the living and the dead and the things the dead built and left behind. The Victoria Memorial is grand because the Victorians understood that grandeur was the appropriate register for celebrating the lives of great people. They were not embarrassed by ambition in bronze and stone. The people designing public monuments in Britain today appear to be embarrassed by exactly that ambition. And the result is a statue that honors the longest reigning monarch in British history, with the aesthetic seriousness one might apply to a civic sculpture in a minor market town. Queen Elizabeth deserved better than this. The country deserved the opportunity to express something more adequate to the scale of what she was and what she meant. And the failure to produce that, the committee decisions and the modern architectural sensibility and the diversity installation in the surrounding grounds that seems to have displaced some of the energy that might have gone into making the central monument genuinely magnificent is a small but genuine cultural failure, one of many, unfortunately. In a Britain that has spent the past several decades unsure of what it is proud of and therefore uncertain about what deserves the kind of confident commemoration that used to come more naturally. The frontline royal family that gathered today at Buckingham Palace to honor centenarians born in the same year as the Queen, that gathering had its own poignant moments. Catherine's interaction with the 88-year-old George Cross hero Tony Gladhill, who told reporters his wife had recently died but had instructed him to attend regardless that moment, caught on camera, showed something of what the royal family's relationship with ordinary people can be at its best. Not the managed photo call of the Melbourne hospital visit or the performance of Bondi Beach. Just two people in a spontaneous moment connecting across the vast difference in their circumstances. Catherine has been, through the past several years of personal health challenge and institutional turmoil, the most consistently reliable source of exactly this kind of genuine human moment. She does not appear to be performing. She does not appear to be managing an interaction for subsequent content. She appears to be present with the specific person in front of her in a way that does not require management because it is not calculated. That quality, the willingness to be genuinely present rather than performing presence, is rarer than it might seem among public figures who are constantly surrounded by cameras. And it is part of why Catherine's personal approval ratings remain high even in a period when the institution around her has faced significant turbulence. Today was supposed to be a celebration. It became, instead, a complex mixture of genuine commemoration of a remarkable life, quiet anxiety about the man who succeeded her and his ability to continue serving, institutional pride at the resilience the monarchy has shown through extraordinary challenges, and something like grief for the Queen herself, certainly, but also for a version of Britain that she represented and that feels, to many people, increasingly distant from the Britain of today. She promised in her first ever broadcast at 14 years old that we can each play our part to make the world of tomorrow a better and happier place. She lived that promise for 7 more decades, never visibly wavering, never publicly complaining, never once suggesting that the burden was too heavy or the sacrifice too great. Charles, in his address today, renewed that same pledge. And watching him do it clearly unwell, clearly tired, pausing and restarting as the filming required one, is struck not just by the cost that promise extracts, but by the depth of the conviction that drives people to make and keep it regardless. That conviction and the institution it has sustained is what Queen Elizabeth II's 100th birthday should be remembered as honoring. Britain has changed enormously in the centuries since her birth. Some of that change is welcome, some of it is not. The monarchy has adapted to some of those changes and resisted others. What has remained constant through the abdication crisis and the war and the decolonization and the family scandals and the pandemic and the ongoing constitutional turbulence is the commitment of specific individuals to service above self. Elizabeth modeled it for 70 years. Charles is modeling it now at great personal cost. And somewhere in the next generation, William and Catherine are preparing to model it in their turn. That continuity, imperfect and expensive and complicated as it is what the centenary is really about. And it deserves better than a monopoly piece on a bollard. Let me dwell a little longer on Charles's address today, because I think it deserves more careful attention than the immediate political questions around abdication and health have allowed. The address was short, it was measured, it was emotionally restrained, in the way that royal communications always are not cold, but disciplined. There was genuine feeling visible in Charles's face, particularly at the end when he said, "God bless you, darling mama." That is not a line that was crafted by a communications team. That is a son speaking to his dead mother. And whatever complicated feelings exist about Charles's reign, about his handling of various family crises, about the decisions he has and has not made, that moment of genuine grief, expressed with simple dignity, is not something that can be managed or performed. It is real. The substance of what he said is also worth examining beyond the abdication question. He spoke about his mother's belief that goodness will always prevail and that a brighter dawn is never far from the horizon. He invoked it specifically in the context of much about the times we now live in, I suspect, may have troubled her deeply. That is, Charles speaking about the present state of the world, the wars, the political instability, the climate, the social fragmentation, and locating within his mother's legacy a reason for hope that is not naive, but is also not despair. She believed goodness prevails. He shares that belief. And he is inviting the country to locate itself within that tradition of quiet, stubborn hope, rather than succumbing to the various forms of anger and cynicism that currently dominate public life. This is Charles at his most genuine, not the Charles of the Camilla controversy or the Andrew mismanagement or the various institutional missteps that have marked his reign. This is the Charles who has spent decades genuinely thinking about what it means to serve, what it means to hope, what it means to build something better than what you inherited.
There will be, and then she talks about next week and Charles's real feelings about Trump, Rafe, and she says, there will be no whiff next week of how viscerally I am told King Charles privately despises his presidential host. The king, a royal advisor, told me, and she is very well connected, will be especially pained by Trump's attacks on Pope Leo. In his decades as Prince of Wales, interfaith understanding was always high on his priority list, to the point that he wanted as monarch to be called defender of faith, not the faith.
The Charles of the addresses to the nation and the commitments to duty and the quiet continuation of work despite illness, the Charles is the one that history will ultimately assess. And the assessment may be kinder than the present moment sometimes suggests. Now let me say something directly about the mainstream media's handling of Charles's health, because it deserves to be named. There is a code of silence operating in the British press around the specifics of the King's condition. The audio anomalies in today's address, the pauses, the restarts, the covers with archive images of the Queen, are visible to anyone watching carefully. They were not reported. The decision to pause cancer treatment for the state visit to America, a decision with significant medical implications, has been noted in passing, but not examined with the seriousness it deserves. The general question of whether Charles is well enough to continue performing the duties of the role at the pace and intensity required is treated as off-limits by outlets that would examine the health of any other public figure with considerably less restraint. Part of this is genuine respect for privacy and for the monarchy's right to manage medical information on its own terms. Part of it is the institutional relationships between royal correspondence and the palace, relationships that depend on access and goodwill, and that would be damaged by too aggressive a pursuit of health stories. And part of it, frankly, is discomfort with the larger question that Charles's health raises, the question of transition, of succession, of what comes next and how soon. But the public has a legitimate interest in knowing, in broad terms, whether the head of state is capable of performing the functions of his office. Not the specific details of his treatment or his prognosis, which are legitimately private, but the general question of capacity, the question of whether what we are seeing is a king governing effectively under difficult circumstances, or a king whose governing capacity is being supplemented increasingly by the person who will eventually succeed him. That question is not answered by silence. It is only deferred. William's growing influence, which we discussed in the context of the York exclusion from Easter, is the institutional answer to that question playing out in practice. The decisions being made increasingly reflect William's judgment. The people around Charles increasingly take their cues from the direction of travel toward William's preferences.
Very unhappy place. The words he chose were very deliberate. They were obviously not identifying anything in particular. And it's not out of keeping with what the Queen would say in her Christmas messages, which she herself wrote with her royal household. She would have used a term like that without being specific, because it's not overtly political. It's just acknowledging something.
What do you think he's referring to?
Well, it's not for me to put words into the King's mouth. It could very well be the fact that the Queen would have been upset to have war for the first time in Europe since the Second World War, the longest war rather, to have what's happening with Israel and Gaza probably, but with the Iranian situation as well. I've never known a more febrile and dangerous time in my life, which is now half a century I've been on this world. This is the most dangerous time. So we can speculate as much as we want. We simply don't know, and I'm not going to put words into the King's mouth.
This is not a conspiracy or a coup. It is the natural and necessary process by which an institution of this kind manages a transition of authority without the destabilizing drama of a formal change of leadership. But it is happening, and the mainstream media's decision to describe Andrew's exclusion from Easter and Beatrice and Eugenie's absence as temporary adjustments, rather than as signals of the institutional reshaping that William is already undertaking, is a failure of honest reporting. Tina Brown's piece, whatever one thinks of her specific assessments, at least has the honesty to say directly what many in the press are thinking but not writing. That power is transferring that Charles's reign will be short, that the problems he inherited are large, and that his time to address them is limited. These are not comfortable things to say. They are not the things that palace communications prefer to see in print, but they are true, and truth.
Okay, Tina Brown, she is the very well-connected royal author. She has published a new Substack with some very interesting detail ahead of the state visit to America yesterday, Rafe. I just wanted to run through some of the key parts of it with you. She writes, as the UK celebrates the 100th anniversary of Queen Elizabeth II's birth this week, her pristine legacy might ultimately be seen as a steaming pile of gilded azure that threatens to bury her descendants. Her 7 decades on the throne, 3 reigns worth of time, inevitably fossilized the monarchy and insulated it from change. Elizabeth II was flawless in conduct, dedicated to duty, and marvelously untroubled by a mutinous inner life, but her aversion to conflict, known by her relatives as ostracine, also means she left behind the punted problems of an infantile, reprobate Prince Andrew, an opaque deep state of unreformed financial arrangements, palatial properties, and sealed wills that cry out for a constitutional clean-up, and a successor, King Charles III, who inherited the throne so late, his short reign will be a race to keep the lid on it all, even as he bravely outruns cancer.
On a day marking the centenary of a monarch whose own defining quality was a commitment to honest service over comfortable performance, seems like the appropriate tribute. The state visit to America will happen next week. Charles will meet Trump. He will be gracious and dignified and diplomatically perfect. The visceral private feelings will stay where they belong private. The relationship between Britain and America will be served by the institution in exactly the way that the institution is designed to serve it. And then Charles will return home, resume his treatment, and continue carrying the role he was anointed to carry, for as long as he is able. The Queen managed to appear at the Jubilee celebrations in 2022, despite significant mobility difficulties, moving carefully, choosing her appearances strategically, conserving her energy for the moments that mattered most. Charles is doing something similar. The state visit matters. The centenary address mattered. The day-to-day management of the role continues around these set-piece moments, carried increasingly by William in the background. The institution adapts. It has always adapted.
To their private views, and everyone does have strong opinions on President Trump. I mean, we know from the King's work as Prince of Wales where he stands on many other issues, and we know where President Trump stands. The key point for us in having a monarch, which King Charles fully understands, is to be entirely neutral at all times, and never to let know what. We never knew who the Queen's favorite president was. We assume it was President Reagan and President Eisenhower, but we never knew about that. We didn't know who her favorite prime minister was officially. We're never going to know who the King really officially loved or hated in terms of those presidents he's met. The key point is Trump loves the monarchy. Trump really respects King Charles hugely.
That capacity for adaptation, invisible from the outside, driven by people who understand what is at stake, is part of what has allowed it to survive through everything it has survived. Queen Elizabeth II understood this better than anyone who has ever held the role. She spent 70 years learning how to carry something that most people cannot imagine carrying. And she did it with a grace and a consistency that will not be replicated in the same form. But the thing she was carrying, the institution, the covenant, the promise made to God, and the country that continues, in Charles's address today, in William's quiet reshaping of the visible royal circle, in Catherine's spontaneous moment with an 88-year-old man whose wife had died and who came to the palace because his wife told him he must. That continuity is the real centenary gift, not the statue which does not do her justice and will be quietly criticized for decades. Not the address, which was genuine but had to be stopped and restarted because the man delivering it is fighting cancer, but the fact that the covenant holds.
Do you know what's also a shame today? I'm just thinking about what this country desperately needs, and imagine the way that we would have come together today if we had been able to celebrate the 100th birthday of this great woman. And I will never forget
that the promise made in 1952 is still being kept in some form 73 years later. That is what Elizabeth's 100th birthday actually marks. And it is worth more than bronze or stone, and considerably more than a Monopoly piece on a bollard.